Well, hello and welcome to another Today in Cowes. It's day 2, Sunday, and the Royal Thames were running things here at the Yacht Squadron, and on the platform were many race officers. Out on the water, though, was Matt Sheehan. Matt, windy old day, and tide was a big thing today, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. The breeze was up. The forecast was always for that breeze to be more. It was forecast to be over 20 knots, and it was certainly all of that at times. But I think the thing that really spiced things up, as you say, was the tide, because the tide was due to actually turn and push against the breeze, which was going to build the sea state. And in fact, it had quite a big effect on, for some classes, on the racing for the day.
It certainly did, and quite a few of the white group were bumped onto committee boat starts to avoid that tidal problem.
Yeah, they certainly did. And before we got to that stage, actually during the early starts of the day, it was very interesting, I thought, to watch a similar kind of scenario, but different, to yesterday. But I say similar because tide was the absolute key. You had to get your tidal decisions right today on the squadron line heading west. And it was tricky because the tide once again was running to the west if you got close inshore, and it was running to the east if you went further offshore at the other end of the line. The difficulty was there was less breeze in on the line if you came in to take the good tide, and there was more breeze out on the line if you had the tide against you. So again, there was this difficult choice to be had. And yesterday it seemed fairly straightforward for a lot of the classes that you had to come in close to the shore and get into that tide. Today it wasn't like that at all. There were some runaway successes with people who started in the middle of the line or just down from the middle of the line and managed to lock into an extra bit of breeze and a lift and just shot off ahead of the rest of the fleet. So it was another tricky old day, and of course it played such an important part in how their races played out later on, because if you could get a jump on the rest of the fleet and then turn around the top mark and go down with the tide, you just launched off the horizon. So we saw quite a few classes today where the leaders really were quite a long way ahead of the rest of the fleet.
Yes, the courses came into that because the first few classes were going to a windward mark close to the island shore, but then they sprung to a mark which is in the middle of the Solent, and there was a real split in the tactician's decision whether to short tack up the coast or head straight out into the strong tide, but obviously the better wind.
Yeah, no, it was a tricky one to do. The other thing that was tricky was for the race committee what to do with the smaller classes, because as that tide was building more and more in the later bit of the morning, it was getting stronger and stronger and pushing into a breeze that was also increasing, and the sea state was forecast to be really quite unpleasant certainly for the smaller boats, the day boats that got lower freeboard and the rest of it. So the race committee, I think quite wisely, made the decision to make a big change and actually send some of those classes further down to the east and have them start over there. Interestingly, not that I wasn't trusting their judgment at all, not for 1 minute, but on our way out to go and film those, I went and took a look at what conditions would have been like for those boats. So when everybody got up today, one of the things they would have noticed, at least the competitors would have noticed, was that there was an amendment to the sailing instructions, and that was to move some of the classes that were due to start here on the Royal Yacht Squadron line later in the morning to a start line further east. And the reason? The tide and the breeze. The breeze was a fair bit more than yesterday, 20, 25 knots, certainly with gusts forecast to be up in the 25, 27 knot range. That in itself was not such a big problem, but what the problem was that the tide was building going towards the west throughout the morning, and that was going to make for quite a lumpy sea state for the One Design boats and boats with low freeboard and the rest of it. It would have made it really quite a slog, an unpleasant slog upwind. We're out here now at, let's just see. Yeah, it's about midday, and this is what they would have faced. So a smart decision on the part of the race committee, and that's why the small boats ended up in the Eastern Solent.
Well, our featured classes here at Cowes on day 2 were the Red Wings and the SB20s, but Matt went down to see the start of the Red Wings, and I think the conditions were quite bumpy. Well,
they were certainly bumpy up off Cowes, and when we got out to where the Red Wings were starting, and indeed the XODs and the Solent Sunbeams and the Victories, they were all down there, and the Squibs, it was actually, the conditions were much calmer down there. I mean, the breeze was still up, but the sea state was much flatter there. The other thing that struck me was that they had this enormous great playground to race in, and actually it was a really good set of circumstances for them, really, because there really wasn't much traffic down there at all. So they had this great big arena in which to race, which was good. There was some great racing. The Red Wings are intensely competitive, there's no question about that, and it was interesting to see them line up on a start line where there weren't the influences of the land and trying to start off the squadron with the tide and the rocks and the beach and the green and everything else. And you see them for what they are, and they are a very, very closely fought fleet, and very intense fleet, and some great racing in there. But not everyone in the Red Wing fleet was having such a good day. The decision to move some of the white group classes to the Eastern Solent was a very good one. The Red Wings came out here, as indeed did several other classes, and what they were greeted by was a wide expanse of water, hardly anybody else here, so a superb racecourse, plenty of breeze, and a pretty flat sea state as well. It couldn't really get much better for the Red Wings. What a great class they are.
Well, Matt actually managed to catch up with the chap that came third in Harlequin in the Red Wings, and that's Matt Alexander.
Matt, so it looks like you had quite a good day out there in the Red Wings. Tell us how you got on.
We did. We had a fantastic day. There was quite a lot of wind today, quite lumpy. The race committee took us down to the Eastern Solent, which was kind of them because we had a little bit flatter water there. So we were 26 boats on the start line. On a committee boat, and we got on quite well. Yeah, we ended up third today, which was fine for us, and very close racing around the front of the fleet. Yeah,
it certainly looked it off the start line. Everybody was bang on the start line. That was, I mean, you mentioned about it being a kind decision, but actually it looked like you had a fantastic playground basically out in the Eastern Solent. There was no one else out there apart from some other classes. It looked like it doesn't really get much better than that.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, this is what Cowes is all about. With beautiful racetrack, lots of windward leeward legs on our course today, which is fantastic for our fleet, and we had a fantastic time.
Now, tell me a little bit about the runners and riders in the Red Wing fleet. You got a third today, but it looks like it gets mixed around. No one walks away with this in the Red Wing fleet.
No, it's a remarkably difficult fleet to place at the top of. We've got 26 boats here at Cowes, and certainly there are 10 or more boats that are sort of vying for a race win or a podium every day. At the very front of the fleet, we've got Mark Downer, well-known Solent sailor, who's been very successful in Etchells and also in the off-season in the Illusion class at Bembridge, where we come from, which is a fantastic miniature 12-metre that they sail there. He's doing very well after 2 days. James Wilson and his crew in number 30 Quail, multiple winners of Cowes Week. Our own boat, we would normally expect to be there or thereabouts, but had a retirement yesterday, so we've got some serious catching up to do. But there are many others who are going to be, troubling the scorers as we go along.
Will you get any discards this week?
One for 7 races or 6 races. If we're down to 5, then it's everything to count, and we're in serious trouble on our boat if that's the case.
Well, that was the story of the Red Wings, but now let's look at SP20s. They started down here on the Royal Yacht Squadron line. Back to live pictures, 24 seconds to go for the SP20s.
Look at them lining up again. We've got the same thing, everyone bunching up close to the committee boat. You just see the yellow mark out the top left going out of shot. That's the pin end, that's the outer distance for the mark. And look at them pushing up. They've got 10 seconds to go. They're going to have to make a call. Slightly mistimed that. 3149. They've had to down a loop, and they're going to do a port tack start at the back of the fleet. Yeah. Individual recall. Can't see with the darkest sails on the front there. Boomerang. Looks like they were over. They're going to go back. Yep, main's off. Away they ease. With the tide against here, it's going to cost you slightly less if you're over in these early starts, because the tide will push you back to the start line, but you still have to turn back into it and beat with everybody else. So ease the sails, ease the gear as the breeze builds, and it should build all the way as they get up towards this corner on the right of picture. There's a little corner there, Egypt Point, and that's where the wind will really funnel round there, and also the tide will really funnel round there, so that will be something as they get up there. Lovely. Look at these two swapping tacks there as they both try and stay closest inshore. It's every time someone takes another nibble in, and look, they only went 3 boat lengths, but they're just trying to stay just inshore of the next boat out there. Because if you end up right on the beach, there's no wind. So if you end up big duck coming down there for 3816, trying to couldn't get in front of those starboard tackers as they came across. So now they did all that work to get out of the tide, and now they've got to duck and go all the way back out into the tide again. And you'll see them in a second probably take another nibble in to get back out of that adverse tide.
Yeah.
3821 coming across on starboard and bouncing a bunch of port tackers off as they go back in.
Sports World Racing.
Now they're going to be
quite
driven
a few
here.
About now. Water, being told.
There'll be a lot of screaming as they get up
from
to
here
onto the beach there. But quite gusty as we look at them going up the green here. There's lots of trimming, lots of hard work being done by the main sheet people in the middle of the boat, easing the gear every time they get a gust. You really want to keep a consistent angle of heel, the boat leaning over.
This is tight racing, isn't it?
Really tight. Look at it. The port and starboard changing tacks every time. And now as they go to the left of shot, the Maltese boat with the cross in the middle getting pushed off.
Look at that gust on the water just at the top of the picture here. Big grey patch.
Really
for
lovely.
The lead boat, yes, going to tack onto port. Loads of room for them.
3276 done a really nice job. They tacked here with their bow just in front. Can't quite read the sail number on the most inshore boat there, left of shot. But really nice. They've stayed ahead, so they are in a controlling position now.
3816 is Tangwilt.
And they go back in for even more, getting out of that adverse tide.
On starboard.
Really pushing it. Are they going to just... Yes, they're going to bounce them. So now they're going to push the fleet in, but the boat that they've forced to tack is going to be able to call water and force them back out again.
Well, that was the fairly spectacular start on the squadron line for the SP20s. And Matt, they actually had 3 races today.
They did. It was a pretty tough day for them actually out on the water, but certainly from what I could see there were plenty of smiles around, mainly because they had a blistering downwind leg from sort of Bewley area where they went round a top mark there, and they just went slicing off right the way across the Solent. And they were clocking out 15, 16, 17 knots. So they were having a whale of a time. And some good racing. And it's really good to see that class still happening here. Not as big as we had hoped for. I mean, it has been much bigger in the past. But I actually caught up with their fleet captain, Phil Tilley, afterwards and was delighted to hear that actually the class is in very rude health.
Generally, I think we've had sort of quite a churn around of people. So as you say, it's 20 years the fleet's been going. So I had a bit of a dip. It's going up again. Really affordable sailing. I think that's the real great thing. We've got some great youths in the boat with Radley College. We've got another sort of Oxford University team. So we've got a lot of new youth coming through, and the boats are really coming on the market at a very affordable price. So
I was going to say that must be one of the things that really helps it, because it's been around a long time, lots of boats were built, and you can pick them up quite cheaply.
Yeah, I think certainly one of the guys here picked a boat up, I think for about £4,000, did some work on it, and very competitive yesterday with it. So I mean the boat price second-hand market ranges from, let's say, £4,000 or £5,000 up to £8,000, and it's a lot of boat for that sort of money, right?
That really is, and it's an international class as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've got the Worlds coming up in September, where we're expecting 80 plus boats there, and really doing really well in Italy, Dubai. Big fleet out there growing. So it's
brilliant. Well, that's really good to hear. Well, good luck for the rest of the week, and let's hope for a bit more breeze.
Yeah, I don't think we can do with too much more breeze. That was good. Yeah, no, today's breeze will be top end of what we like, but yeah.
So, what about other highlights? Well, it was a windy start, and we enjoyed the commentary here, Oscar Mead and I, on the start line. But for me, I think the epitome of it was the Contessa 32 fleet. And Blanco and Andaxi were in a real tacking duel off the start line. Nice port tack starts. And they decided to stick close to the island shore. And at the end of the day, Andaxi managed to beat Blanco just about. But there was plenty of action out on the water, Matt. And I think you been gathering some information in an unusual source.
Absolutely, yes. I have been researching and some of my favourite locations for research, and it is only research. It might be called the beer tent to other people, but it's where I go to work. No, it was pretty pretty interesting down at the Haven. this evening in the beer tent there, because there was certainly among the IRC fleets, the Grand Prix IRC fleets, there was quite a lot of chatter about some rather challenging conditions that they'd had down the Western Solent. The Cape 31s took a bit of a pasting down there. I think it was pretty breezy with some quite big sea states. There was one dismasting, very sadly, but I think from what I hear, they lost their mast when they came out of a jibe and the other way. Someone else managed to get themselves tangled around a mark and wiped out, but it was pretty full on for those boats down there. So that's the kind of stuff that that Cowsweek is made of from time to time. Cowsweek wouldn't be Cowsweek without a few dramas. The other thing that struck me, I think, more broader really rather than a highlight, was actually going out into the Eastern Solent and seeing the white group classes sailing out there off a line, dead square line, on racing that was predominantly windward leeward for them. And we're used to seeing that in Grand Prix boats, but less so with the white group classes. So that was good. I really enjoyed watching that. I always enjoy watching the white group classes. So yeah, that was a great day out on the water.
Well, it was a great day here, day 2 of Cowsweek 2022, and the final thing we should say is that there's some beautiful finishes here. The classic Cows finish of all the spinnakers coming up to the gun, and the spectators walking around the shore, jumping out their skins when a gun goes off. It's always quite a laugh for us. Anyway, that's about it from day 2 of Today in Cows. We look forward to day 3. Racing starts, of course, 10 o'clock onwards, our programme here, and we look forward to that. Let's hope that the breeze stays up for the week. Matt?
Indeed, I think it looks like it will.